Order in the court. The gavel crashed down on the wooden block with a deafening sound. His booming voice filled the room, muffling the excited murmurings that had been growing for almost an hour. The jammed courtroom fell into a strained silence, the sort of silence that was filled with both fear and expectation. Cameras from news stations in the neighborhood clicked away one after the other. Reporters, elbow to elbow on the benches, scribbled away on their notebooks, their eyes flicking back and forth between Meri and Janelle as if hawks sensing prey. This was not a standard family argument. This was a confrontation that had drawn the interest of everybody who had watched the Browns since the beginning. The Browns occupied seats sprinkled throughout the courtroom, their faces set with tension. Christine sat stiffly, hands together so tightly that her knuckles were white. Robin squirmed in her seat, talking softly to Cody, who simply glared at the front of the room, his jaw set, his eyes impassive. Even the younger members of the Brown family, who normally attempted to keep themselves out of the limelight, had come, their faces split down the middle between loyalty and terror. At the heart of the situation, mere feet between them, sat Meri Brown and Janelle Brown. The tension in the air between them was palpable, so dense that even a casual passerby would sense the impending storm brewing. Meri was the first to stand. She didn't stand up fast. Rather, she stood with slow deliberation, as if a queen standing up from her throne. Her chair scraped on the floor, the sound cutting across the silence and causing a number of individuals in the gallery to jump. Her sharp, unyielding eyes bored directly into Janelle. In her right hand she gripped a fat folder, its edges worn and frayed from too many fingers toting it. That folder had been in her possession since she appeared in the courtroom, and rumors had circulated immediately about what could be inside. Evidence? Letters? Secrets the family believed were forever buried? No one was certain, but everyone was dying to know. Meri's grip on the folder tightened. The knuckles of her hand turned pale, her veins rising against her skin. This wasn't just paper. To her, it was a weapon, one she had been waiting years to use. She took a step forward, her heels clicking on the wooden floor with a noise that resonated throughout the room. Then another step. Then another. Each step seemed to suck the air from the chamber, so that everyone was momentarily breathless. Finally she reached the center table, and with a swift motion, she slammed the folder down so hard that the sound bounced against the walls and ceiling. The reporters in the gallery gasped. Cameras flashed. Even the judge arched an eyebrow. Meri's voice cut through the silence, sharp and unflinching. "Today," she declared, her tone steady but filled with fury, "the truth about Janelle will finally be exposed." The phrase hung suspended in the air like cigarette smoke. The crowd burst into quiet whispers. Someplace in the rear, somebody gasped out loud. The atmosphere immediately changed. This was not going to be a typical family feud. This was war. On the opposite side of the table, Janelle attempted to remain composed. She sat up straight, with hands neatly clasped together in her lap, trying to paste a serene smile on her face. But her eyes betrayed her. For an instant, barely perceptible to anyone, her pupils flared. A glimpse of fear, raw and uncontrolled, flickered over her face. She quickly covered it up, inclined her head and raised her chin as if one filled with confidence in her innocence. But Meri saw, and so did Christine, who squirmed uncomfortably in the stands, her eyes flicking back and forth between the two women, as if she already understood that something awful was going to be revealed. The judge cleared his throat. "Mrs. Brown," he stated sternly, his voice trying to contain the drama, "this court will not abide theatrics. Make your case in order." But Meri wasn't fazed. Her gaze never wavered from Janelle's. She leaned forward slightly, her palms pressing against the folder as though daring Janelle to snatch it away. Her voice lowered, but the tone was razor-sharp, carrying easily across the silent courtroom. "For too long, the truth has been buried. For too long, I've been painted as the weak one, the bitter one, the outsider. But today," she stopped, glaring at Janelle with a blaze that made the other woman shift uncomfortably. "Today, the mask is removed." The courtroom responded in an instant. Reporters wrote more furiously. One even whispered, "This is bigger than we imagined." Janelle's smile faltered. She pushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear, a nervous tick she couldn't suppress. Her lips parted as if she desired to say something, but she held back and said nothing. She fussed with the lapel of her blazer instead, attempting to appear calm, but her body told a different story. The tap-tapping of her foot beneath the table, the way her shoulders tensed every time Meri actually looked at her, the shallow rise and fall of her chest as her breathing became irregular. And Meri noticed all of it. She cocked her head ever so slightly, a sneer playing at the corner of her mouth. To her, this was more than just revealing Janelle. It was finally gaining strength back after years of being shoved to the background. The judge looked at the clock. "Mrs. Brown, continue with your accusation. The court cannot cater to theatrics." But Meri leaned back only a little, slowly allowing the tension to build like a wave poised to break. She wanted every individual in that courtroom to sense the intensity of what was about to happen. She wanted Janelle to fret, to worry, to realize that the walls were closing in. Then suddenly Mary's lawyer stood. His chair screeched against the floor as he rose, his face stern. He adjusted his tie and turned toward the judge. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steady, "what my client is about to reveal will shake not only this courtroom, but the entire foundation of the Brown family. The defendant, Janelle Brown, has been accused of betrayal, betrayal so deep, so personal, that once the truth is revealed, there will be no turning back." The words hung heavy in the air. Even the judge looked startled. The courtroom erupted into disarray, reporters murmuring, cameras clicking, family members gasping. Robin clapped her hand over her mouth, whispering something wildly to Cody. Christine squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head as if she had feared this moment above all others. And Janelle, she finally broke down her serene facade. Her lips quivering, she hissed something softly to her attorney, her eyes bulging. Mary's gaze didn't waver. She stood tall, the folder beneath her hand, her presence commanding the entire courtroom. For the first time in years, Meri Brown wasn't the woman left in the shadows. She was the one pulling the strings, holding the evidence, and making everyone, including Janelle, wait for the inevitable reveal. And in that moment, as the courtroom buzzed with whispers and flashes, the suspense reached its peak. What was in that folder? What was the secret Meri was about to let loose? And why did Janelle already seem to know her world was going to be shattered? The audience didn't have the answers yet, but they knew one thing for sure. This was only the start. The gavel came down again, ringing like a warning shot through the crowded courtroom. "Mrs. Brown," the judge barked, "you can continue. What are your accusations against the defendant?" All the camera lenses in the room zoomed in. Reporters edged forward on their benches, pens scratching wildly across paper. Even the spectators who had been sitting in expectant silence now shifted uneasily, straining to catch the first words of accusation. For years, the Browns' history had been a web of betrayal and drama, and shifting allegiances. But this Meri facing off against Janelle in court was something no one would have anticipated. Meri didn't respond immediately. She stood there motionless, one hand clamped down over the folder she had slapped onto the table, mere seconds before. Her gaze never wavered from Janelle's face. She wasn't addressing the judge. She was setting herself up to land a solid punch at the woman seated in front of her. At last, she nodded almost imperceptibly toward her attorney. Her lawyer, a tall, angular man, whose voice was rich in authority, stood up. He straightened his tie with measured calm and turned to the judge. "Your Honor," he started, his tone direct and concise. "My client blames Janelle Brown for betrayal. Not the sort that is forgotten within days or weeks, but one that has severed deep into trust, family, and identity. The evidence we possess will demonstrate conclusively that Janelle operated in secrecy, with selfish motives, and that her actions directly resulted in destroying the stability of my client." The room buzzed with whispers. Betrayal, family, destruction. Mary's lawyer continued, his voice rising with each sentence. "This is not a case of misunderstanding, Your Honor. This is a case of calculated deception. Janelle Brown made choices that robbed my client of what was rightfully hers. She undermined trust, manipulated circumstances, and left Meri Brown to face consequences she should never have carried alone. Gasps echoed through the crowd. The reporters leaned in even farther, some almost standing on the benches, hoping to hear each phrase. Meri slowly raised her chin, her eyes shining, not with tears of vulnerability, but with fire in someone who was finally taking back her voice. She aimed directly at Janelle. "She's been lying for years," Meri stated firmly but with venom. "She smiled in my face and stabbed me in the back. She made choices that ruined me. And now it's time the truth is told." The room grew quiet once more, the tension of her words looming like a cloud over their heads. Janelle's attorney jumped to his feet at once, his chair screeching against the floor. "Objection," he growled. "These are mere bald-faced accusations. Mrs. Brown is grandstanding, not this court." But the judge held up a hand to stop him. "Objection recorded. The plaintiff will present proof." The focus returned immediately to Meri. She smiled weakly as if she had been waiting for this. Her hand eased down over the folder, feeling its edge, before she nudged it forward slightly on the table. The rustle of paper moved around in the silence. "Within this folder," Meri said slowly, "are papers evidence of Janelle's betrayal. Evidence that she didn't just make a mistake, but made a decision. Evidence that she chose her own gain more important than loyalty. More important than me." Her words were a knife and pierced each of them in the courtroom. The judge's expression turned keen, and he leaned slightly forward. The journalist wrote with wild abandon, their fingers scrambling to keep up with the breakneck confessions. But at the other end of the table, Janelle had had enough. She leaped to her feet, her face flushed with emotion, her voice cracking with fury as she bellowed, "That's not true." The courtroom exploded. Relatives gasped. Voices grew shrill, the din of pandemonium filling the air until the gavel came down again and again from the judge's bench. "Order! Order!" But Janelle was unable to hold back. Her voice, shaking with rage and desperation, filled the room. "You're distorting everything, Meri. You've always distorted everything. You want to make me out to be the bad guy. Because you can't handle reality. Because you can't handle the decisions we had to make." Meri's lips twisted into a sneer. "Choices? You call it a choice to stab me in the back? To steal what was mine? To smile sweetly and then kill me?" Janelle's mouth worked, but nothing came out. She spun to her lawyer, whispering hysterically. But the damage was done. Her voice had shaken, her composure had cracked, and everyone in the room could see it. The judge narrowed his eyes. "Mrs. Brown," he stated, looking at Janelle, "is there something you'd like to confess to this court?" Janelle froze. For a moment she did not say a word. Her chest heaved rapidly. Her fingers clenched on the edge of the table, so hard her knuckles became white. She shook her head once, shaking it again, her lips shaping the word. "No," but her silence dragged too long. Her hesitation weighed too much. Meri drew closer, her voice falling to a virtual whisper, yet still audible over the hushed courtroom. "Your silence speaks volumes, Janelle. You know what you did. And now, so will they." The crowd broke out again. Christine placed her hand over her mouth, tears brimming in her eyes, as if fragments of a puzzle she had dismissed were at last clicking into place. Robin whispered urgently to Cody, who sat ramrod stiff, his face chalky and face unreadable. Janelle slid slowly back into her seat, her hands shaking as she kept everyone's eyes away from hers. The now tattered mask of calm she once had on was stripped away, and raw fear took its place. And Meri towered above, her aura dominating the space. For once she wasn't the woman behind. She was the one with the truth, the one calling Janelle to the forefront, the one pulling secrets from the darkness. The tension was intolerable. What had she been keeping in that folder? What was so bad that Janelle, the normally level-headed one, appeared on the verge of breaking? The judge at last broke his silence, his deep voice a final one. "Evidence is required by this court. Mrs. Brown, proceed please." Meri put both hands on the folder, her gaze sparkling but not wavering from Janelle's face. Deliberately slowly, she opened it, the paper rustling more loudly than any voice. The whole courtroom leaned forward, held their breaths, awaiting the truth. But instead of bringing out the documents, Meri halted. She shut the folder with a quick snap and stared directly at Janelle. "Not yet," she said icily. Let her sweat for a while longer. The crowd gasped. Even the judge seemed surprised. And thus the tension in the courtroom just became darker, heavier, more intolerable than ever before. The charge had been uttered. The treason had been called. But the proof, the evidence was still concealed, sealed away in that folder that now frightened all. The judge's gavel fell once more, ringing through the courtroom like thunder. Enough, he thundered. The court will be orderly. The defendant may reply to these charges. All eyes shifted to Janelle. She sat stiffly in her chair, her chest rising and falling rapidly, as though she had just sprinted across a field. Her lips pressed tightly together, her knuckles white as her hands gripped the table. For a long moment she didn't move. It was as if the weight of Meri's words had pinned her in place. Her attorney huddled in close, whispering frantically into her ear. The room was so hushed that even the soft scrape of his chair was audible enough to turn heads. He pointed in the direction of the judge, then toward the crowd, reminding her that they were all watching. At last Janelle took a deep breath, forcing herself upright. Her legs shook a little under her, but she braced herself with both hands on the table. She attempted to appear calm, her shoulders straightening, her chin high, but the shaking in her voice betrayed her. "Your Honor," she began, her voice cracking before she cleared her throat, and tried again. "Your Honor, this entire case is built on anger and resentment. Meri is twisting the truth to make me into something I'm not. She wants to destroy me because she can't face her own failures." Gasps erupted from the crowd, and a ripple of whispers surged through the room. Meri, her feet planted firmly in front of her, squinted. Her face remained impassive. She seemed almost amused, as if Janelle's words were mere weak evasions. The judge held up a hand to silence the crowd. "Mrs. Brown, the court needs facts, not insults. Address the charges." Janelle swallowed hard, her throat compressing visibly. "There are no allegations that have merit," she declared hastily, her words spilling out faster than she could control. "Meri is lying. She's angry. She's been angry for a long time, and now she wants to punish me by taking me to court on unsubstantiated allegations." Her attorney stood by her side, his voice steady and controlled, compared to her frantic zeal. "Your Honor, what we are witnessing is an emotional vendetta. The alleged evidence contained in Meri's folder has yet to be shared, and until then, these allegations are nothing more than speculation." The judge nodded slowly, accepting the point, but the murmurs in the courtroom did not cease. Everyone had witnessed the panic that had crossed Janelle's face. Everyone had seen her shaking hands. And Meri, she said nothing. She didn't need to. The fact that she looked at Janelle, unwavering, was enough to inform the whole room that she took Janelle's own body language to be a confession. Christine, 2 rows back, bit her lip anxiously. She looked at Cody, who was impassive, his arms tightly folded across his chest. Robin leaned forward in her seat, her fingers twisting anxiously the material of her blouse. The air was thick. Janelle attempted again, louder this time, but her voice cracking with each sentence. "I never did anything against you, Meri. Not ever. You've always thought of me as the enemy, but I've never done anything against you. The choices I made, they weren't made for you. They were made for the family, for staying together, for survival." Her tirade reverberated throughout the courtroom. For a fleeting moment, her sincerity rang true. Even the audience appeared to be taken with her, their murmurs hushed. But then Meri retaliated. "Survival?" she spat icily, her tone cutting through the stillness. "You call survival to take from me what was rightfully mine, to smile in my face while you turn the knife in my back. Don't you pretend that you did this for the family, you did it for your own self." The words struck Janelle like a slap. She winced, her fists clenching on the edge of the table as if she had to hold onto it in order to remain standing. Her lips shook, but no sound escaped. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Brown," he stated sternly, speaking to Janelle, "your silence will be interpreted as suspicion. If you have nothing to hide, then state it clearly. Did you or did you not behave in a manner that undercut Meri Brown?" The question hung there, heavy with the weight of a hammer dropping. Janelle's mouth opened, but only a little, and her voice caught in her throat. She shook her head feebly, her eyes flicking to her attorney. to the judge, and finally to Meri. The silence dragged on too long. Journalists scribbled wildly. Cameras snapped. The crowd leaned forward, watching her every twitch, every tremor. Finally Janelle spoke, her voice so low it was hardly a whisper. "I never meant to hurt her." The room exploded. Gasps, yells, murmurs, everyone responded simultaneously. Christine covered her mouth with one hand, staring in shock. Robin breathed softly, "Oh no," into her hand. Even Cody sat forward, now his teeth clenched, his gaze searing into Janelle with incredulity. Meri took advantage of the moment. "Never intended to hurt me," she shook with rage, repeating, "You don't accidentally betray someone for years, Janelle. You knew exactly what you were doing. And now finally you'll have to answer for it." Janelle shook her head wildly, tears welling in her eyes. "No, you don't get it. It wasn't like that. I did what I had to do. I thought I was protecting us all." The judge struck his gavel. "Mrs. Brown, stop it. This court will not stand for shouting matches." But the harm was done. Janelle's words, her shaking voice, her failure to deny outright, all of it created a portrait she couldn't shake. Her attorney attempted to bail out the moment. "Your Honor, this is precisely what I said. These are emotional responses, not facts. My client is being driven into a corner by charges without basis. Until Meri brings actual evidence, this court has no reason to continue entertaining these allegations." The judge nodded once more, but his gaze stayed on Janelle. Her control was beginning to break, and he was aware of it. The jury of public opinion, the cameras, the media, the family, all witnessed it as well. Meri folded her arms and smiled with triumph. She didn't have to open the folder yet. Janelle was falling apart on her own, bit by bit, word by word. And as the whispers grew louder and more insistent, as the pressure of suspicion bore harder upon Janelle's shoulders, one thing was certain: her defense wasn't working. It was killing her. The courtroom hadn't yet settled after Janelle's struggling defense, before the judge's stern voice broke through the chattering. "Order in the court." The gavel fell, quelling the whirlwind of murmurs. But there remained a current of electricity in the room, as if everyone felt they could feel something historic on the verge of happening. Meri stood quietly at her table, arms crossed, her file of evidence unruffled. She hadn't shown a single page, and yet Janelle was already on the brink of exhaustion. But Meri wasn't done, not by a long shot. She raised her chin and spoke to the judge. "Your Honor," she spoke firmly, her voice unwavering, "I have a witness." The words hit the room like lightning. Heads swiveled. A low rumble traveled across the benches. Cameras flashed madly. Janelle froze. Her gaze searched Meri, then the judge, then the crowd, as if seeking escape. A witness. Her mouth opened in silent dismay. She hadn't anticipated this. The judge raised an eyebrow. "A witness, Mrs. Brown? One not before disclosed." Meri nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. This witness has been in hiding until now, afraid of repercussions. But today they're prepared to testify." The judge shifted back in his chair, weighing the situation. Then with a stern nod, he signaled to the bailiff. "Very well, bring out the witness." The bailiff called out, "Christine Brown, step forward, please." The response was immediate. Gasps, shouts, incredulity, washing over the courtroom. "Christine?" Janelle went white. Her body froze, her hands gripping the edge of the defense table for support, as if the only thing holding her up at the moment. "No," she breathed, her head moving frantically from side to side. No. Cody sat up ramrod straight, his eyes finally wide all trial long. Robin clung to the arm of her seat, whispering something desperately under her breath. Christine emerged from the gallery, her movements slow but resolute, as she moved toward the witness stand. Her face was unyielding, but her eyes keen, shining with contained emotion, never once left Janelle. The bailiff extended a Bible, and Christine put her hand on it. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do," Christine stated resolutely. She sat down at the stand, her hands clasped neatly, her back straight. For the first time in years, Christine appeared strong. not as the introverted sister-wife frequently overshadowed by the others, but as a woman who bore the weight of truth. Meri walked towards her slowly, her tone even but weighted. "Christine, why now? Why come forward today?" Christine took a breath, her eyes flashing for an instant to Janelle, before coming back to Meri. "Because I can no longer keep quiet. I've held it too long. I saw what was done. I know what they did, and I know who did it." The courtroom exploded once more. The gavel of the judge came down hard. "Order, order." But even as the commotion ceased, tension didn't. The silence that followed was crushing. Meri moved in closer. "Christine, tell the court what you saw." Christine narrowed her eyes, her gaze focusing on Janelle, who now seemed on the verge of breaking down. Her eyes welled up with tears, but her attorney whispered urgently for her to remain calm. Christine delivered each word slowly, as if she were carving stone. "I witnessed the betrayal. I witnessed how trust was destroyed. Not once, not by mistake, but repeatedly. And I know why Janelle betrayed me." An audible gasp ran through the crowd. The name uttered so simply, cut in the air. Janelle slammed her palms onto the table. "Lies! She's lying," she cried, her voice cracking. "Christine, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're only doing it out of loyalty to Meri, because, she couldn't finish," and her words fractured under the pressure of her fear. Christine didn't waver. She maintained her tone, her gaze unyielding. "You lied to us, Janelle. You lied to me. You lied to Meri. You lied to the family. And you've been keeping it a secret for years." The room stood at attention. Cody, breaking his silence at last, leaned forward and spoke in a clenched jaw. "Christine, tread very carefully here." Christine turned to him, her voice steady but sharp. "I'm not afraid anymore, Cody. Not of you, not of anyone. The truth has been buried for too long, and today it's coming out." Her words sent a chill through the room. Robin's hand shot up to cover her mouth. Christine had never spoken with such force, such finality. Meri stepped back, making way for Christine to go on, her accuser's role briefly taken over by Christine's own gathering tempest. Christine faced the judge again. "Your Honor, I know something that's never been said. And I know because I was present. I witnessed it." The judge's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward. "Specifics, Mrs. Brown. What did you see precisely?" Christine's eyes snapped back to Janelle. She paused long enough to create agony-filled tension. Her lips quivered, but her voice, when it arrived, was crisp and shattering. "I witnessed Janelle do the one thing we all promised we'd never do. I witnessed her cross the boundary. And if this court desires evidence, I'm willing to provide it." The crowd erupted into pandemonium. Screams of incredulity, weeping cries of horror, wild whispers hung in the air. The judge's gavel rained down repeatedly, commanding silence. But in the maelstrom, Janelle shattered, her face contorted, tears streaming openly now. She shook her head wildly, whispering, "No, no, she can't. She can't prove it." Her attorney attempted to hold her steady, but she pushed his hand aside. Her body shook with the load of panic. Christine, unshaken, unflinching, leaned forward in the witness stand. Her next words cut through the din like a knife. "You can try to deny it, Janelle, but you and I both know it's true. And when I expose it, there's no turning back." The whole courtroom stalled, hanging there in the space between accusation and disclosure. The judge's voice intervened, deep and authoritative. "Mrs. Brown, what precisely are you going to divulge?" Christine stared him straight in the face, then turned back to Janelle. She hung there, heavy and unendurable. Before she spoke, cold with a mesmerizing calm. "The betrayal did not destroy Meri alone. It destroyed all of us, because Janelle had help, and I can identify who assisted her." The courtroom went completely out of control. The courtroom was ablaze with chaos. The audience surged with gasps and shouts, journalists almost tumbling over one another, as they wrote hysterical notes. "Not alone? Who is she referring to? What is she saying proof?" The judge's gavel boomed like thunder. "Order, order. If this courtroom doesn't come to order, I will order the benches cleared." Gradually the audience froze, but the tension was still heavy enough to strangle on. Everyone waited for Christine. Her words hung in the air, like a cloud of smoke, tainting the silence. Janelle's shoulders had slumped, her eyes wild and red, her breathing shallow and ragged. She knew, at some deep place within her, she knew what was to come. The judge leaned forward, his voice cutting. "Mrs. Brown, you've made a very serious allegation. You will now, under oath, tell us who specifically helped Janelle in this betrayal." Christine took a deep breath, bracing herself. Her eyes blazing now, slowly moved toward the defense table. Cody shifted in his seat, his jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on her as if challenging her to say it. Robin shifted beside him, wringing her hands until her knuckles turned white. And then Christine had the last word. Her voice fell like boulders. Janelle was not alone. She was guarded. And the person who guarded her was Cody Brown. The courtroom exploded. Gasp after gasp came from all directions. People jumped to their feet. Witnesses screamed questions across each other. Cody pounded his fists on the table, his face aflame with anger. "That is a lie," he thundered. "A sick, perverted lie." The judge's gavel boomed once more. "Mr. Brown, you will sit down." Christine didn't even blink. She didn't take her gaze from Cody, her words slicing the din like a razor. "I saw it. I heard it. You instructed Janelle to exactly do that. You instructed her on how to hide it. You instructed her on how to make Meri question herself. You instructed her to burn all remnants of trust in this family." Mary's face was white, but her lips twisted ever so slightly. It was not a smile. It was the hard breath of someone who had at last been proven correct. Robin leapt to her feet, shaking a finger at Christine. "This is crazy. Christine has despised Cody for years. Everyone knows that. She's just doing this to get back at him. Tell them, Janelle. Tell them it's not true." But Janelle didn't budge. She couldn't. She shook uncontrollably as she covered her face in her hands. Her stifled sobs cut through the silence. Everyone was watching her, waiting. At last, she broke. Janelle stood up, the chair creaking behind her. Her tears flowed in great gushes as her words poured out in jagged, broken pieces. I didn't want it to go this far. I thought it would just make things simpler. Cody said nobody would ever find out. That it would be our secret, that we had to shield the family reputation." Her knees gave way and her attorney just managed to grab her before she fell. The crowd gasped, some whispering, others shaking their heads in dismay. Cody's face contorted with anger. "Stop it, Janelle. Don't you dare drag me in on this. Don't you dare lie." But Janelle just cried more and more. "You told me, Cody. You told me if Meri broke, it would only make Robin stronger. You said she was the future, not us. I was just doing what you instructed me to do." The room stopped. All eyes turned to Cody. For the first time ever, the man who had once swaggered with pride, who had quieted rooms with his thunderous voice, who had inspired fear and loyalty both, appeared cornered. Actually cornered. The judge tilted forward, his tone keen as a blade. "Mr. Brown, do you deny these accusations?" Cody's chest heaved, his face flushed, his hands fisted around the table like he could break it. "I deny every word. It's a witch hunt. These women, Meri, Christine, even Janelle, they're all resentful. They all want to hurt me because I left. Because I found better for myself." His voice trembled with the force of his anger, but it was no longer strength. It was desperation. Christine did not flinch. She dipped into her folder, her fingers calm. "That would be convenient, Cody. But you overlooked something. I retained the recordings." The courtroom gasped as she pushed a tiny USB drive across to the bailiff. "Conversations, phone calls, nights in which you and Janelle schemed against Meri. Evidence?" Cody's face went white, his mouth opened, but no voice emerged. The judge gestured to the bailiff. "Enter this as evidence." Cody exploded, yelling, "No, this is illegal, this is manufactured." But his voice was overpowered by the uproar of the courtroom, half in horror, half in rage. Robin grabbed his arm, pleading in a sobbed whisper, "Cody, stop, please stop." But Cody wrenched away, his rage overflowing. "This is your doing," he screamed at Janelle, If you'd said nothing, none of this would have happened. You've destroyed me. The crowd gasped at his treachery, his willingness to sacrifice Janelle for all to see. Janelle slumped into her chair and wept hysterically. Meri advanced, her voice steady, almost unnervingly so. Your Honor. For years I've been told I was paranoid, that I was bitter, that I was delusional in my perceptions of betrayal. But today, the evidence cannot be denied. It wasn't only Janelle, it wasn't only rumors, it was Cody. It was always Cody. The judge's gavel crashed down. Enough. Silence filled the room. He glanced across the room, his face solemn, his tone one of finality. Enough has been heard in this court. The testimony, the confessions, and the evidence brought here today are damning. Janelle Brown, your treachery has been revealed. Cody Brown, your manipulation of this whole charade has been brought to light. You played with the people you claimed to care for the most, destroying the very roots you sought to preserve. Cody attempted to interrupt, but the glare from the judge was enough to shut him up. This family has been ripped apart by lies, deceit, and cruelty. But today, the truth has won out. This court is in favor of Meri Brown. The gavel came down one last time. Case closed. The courtroom erupted, reporters rushing to Meri, flashbulbs going off like firecrackers. The crowd yelling, weeping, gasping. Cody's face contorted into raw fury as he was held back by bailiffs, his screams echoing futilely across the storm. Janelle sobbed with hysterical abandon, her body shaking beneath the burden of her admission. Robin held on to Cody, her tears streaming down her face as she pleaded with him to desist. But Meri stood unyielding. For the first time in decades, she wasn't the broken wife. She wasn't the abandoned woman. She wasn't the shadow. She was the victor. Christine rose beside her, her hand brushing Meri's arm. Their eyes met, two women who had been silenced, finally heard. And as the cameras flashed and the world saw, Meri Brown emerged from the courtroom, no longer as the forgotten wife of Cody Brown, but as the woman who finally took him down.